Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're tackling ChatGPT in education. It's been making headlines and sparking debates left and right. Is it a game changer or a recipe for disaster? We're going to find out. We're diving into some serious research today, a meta-analysis to be exact. Does ChatGPT enhance student learning? That's the big question Deng and their team set out to answer.
And they didn't mess around. These researchers sifted through literally thousands of studies to find the most reliable evidence. We're talking 69 experimental studies, which is like the gold standard for figuring out if something actually causes something else, cause and effect.
Exactly. We don't want just opinions and anecdotes here. We need hard data. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the findings, let's set the stage. Imagine a world where AI can write your essays, answer your homework questions, even tutor you in statistics. Sounds amazing, right? But also kind of scary.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. You've got teachers worried about cheating, parents wondering if their kids are actually learning, and students, well, some are probably thrilled at the thought of AI doing their homework. But is that really what education's all about?
That's the million-dollar question. And that's what Deng et al. Tried to untangle. They wanted to know if ChatGPT really does enhance student learning or if it's just a fancy shortcut.
And to do that, they had to go beyond those observational studies. The ones that just look at what's happening in the real world. Like, remember that study in China where they found a link between ChatGPT use and higher grades? Made a big splash, but it couldn't tell us if ChatGPT was actually causing those better grades.
Right. Correlation doesn't equal causation. Maybe those students who were already high achievers were just more likely to use ChatGPT in the first place. It's a chicken or the egg situation.
Exactly. So to get to the bottom of this, Deng et al. Focused on those 69 experimental studies. These studies are designed to isolate the effects of ChatGPT, to see if it actually makes a difference in how students learn and perform.
Okay, so drum roll, please. What do they find? Well, the headline is that ChatGPT does seem to improve academic performance. But before we all start celebrating or panicking, there's a big caveat here. A lot of those studies didn't control for whether students were using ChatGPT during tests.
So it's like, are they really learning the material or just getting really good at using AI to get the right answers? Big difference.
Huge difference. It's like, imagine you're learning to play the piano, but you're secretly using a hidden recording of a virtuoso during your performance. Sure, it sounds amazing, but are you actually developing the skills? Are you really a pianist?
It raises all sorts of questions about what we mean by learning and achievement in the age of AI. Are we simply shifting the goalposts?
Right. We need to be careful about jumping to conclusions, and this is especially important when we're talking about writing assignments. ChatGPT might be able to spit out grammatically perfect essays, but is it actually helping students develop those critical thinking and writing skills they need to succeed in life?
I mean, writing isn't just about stringing words together. It's about formulating arguments, expressing ideas clearly, and engaging in thoughtful analysis. Those are skills that take time and practice to develop.
Absolutely. We need more research that looks beyond just the surface level, beyond just grades and test scores. We need to delve into the quality of thinking behind those results.
And that's where things get even more interesting. This meta-analysis didn't just look at academic performance. It also looked at the impact of ChatGPT on motivation and enjoyment of learning. And guess what? They found some pretty surprising results.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, it seems that using ChatGPT can actually give students a motivational boost, especially at the university level.
Really? That's fascinating. Why do you think that is?
Well, think about it. University students are often juggling a ton of responsibilities, demanding coursework, research projects, part-time jobs. They're constantly being asked to analyze complex information and produce high-quality work.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
Exactly. So having ChatGPT as a sort of brainstorming partner or writing assistant, or even a source of instant feedback, could be a huge relief. It's like having a 247 study buddy who never gets tired of answering your questions.
That makes a lot of sense. But before we all rush out to give ChatGPT to every student, let's pump the brakes for a second. Remember, a lot of this research is based on self-reporting, meaning students said they felt more motivated. We need to be cautious about taking that at face value.
Yeah, it's possible that the initial novelty of using AI is driving some of that enthusiasm. We need more research to see if these positive effects on motivation are sustainable over time, or if they eventually fizzle out.
Okay, so we've talked about academic performance and motivation, but there's one big elephant in the room that we haven't addressed yet, the thinking skills. Does using ChatGPT turn students into lazy thinkers? Does it stifle their creativity and critical thinking abilities?
That's the question everyone wants to know, right? And the answer might surprise you, because this meta-analysis actually suggests that using ChatGPT could actually enhance higher-order thinking skills.
Wait, what? Seriously, that seems counterintuitive.
I know, right? It goes against our initial assumptions. But when you think about how ChatGPT could be used in a learning environment, it starts to make a bit more sense. Imagine a student using ChatGPT to gather different perspectives on a complex issue, to help them structure their arguments, or to identify gaps in their understanding.
So it's not just about getting ChatGPT to do the thinking for them, it's about using it as a tool to support and scaffold their own thinking process.
Exactly. It's like ChatGPT is acting as a sort of cognitive training wheels, helping students open up those critical thinking muscles. But of course, we need more research to confirm this and to explore how these potential cognitive benefits play out in different learning contexts.
Okay, so this is already a lot to digest, but there's one more finding from this meta-analysis that I think is really important to highlight, and it's about mental effort. It turns out that using ChatGPT can actually lead to a decrease in mental effort for students.
Now, on the surface, that might sound like a good thing. Who doesn't want things to be easier? But the researchers found something interesting. This reduced mental effort was sometimes linked to worse performance on tasks that require reasoning and argumentation.
That's interesting. It's like ChatGPT is making things too easy and students aren't really engaging with the material on a deeper level.
It raises some important questions about the role of effort in learning. Is it always a good thing to make things easier for students? Or do we need a certain amount of struggle, a certain amount of cognitive sweat to really learn and grow?
That's a great point, and it's a question that we need to grapple with as we think about the role of AI in education. Are we creating a generation of students who are overly reliant on AI to do their thinking for them?
And if so, what are the long-term implications of that?
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the potential benefits of ChatGPT for academic performance, motivation, and even higher order thinking skills. But we've also highlighted the potential pitfalls, the need for careful consideration, and the importance of more research.
Before we jump into some specific examples of how ChatGPT is being used in different learning environments, there's one more thing we need to address, those methodological limitations we mentioned earlier. Remember how we talked about the importance of those experimental studies?
Yes, they're the gold standard for figuring out cause and effect.
Well, it turns out that a lot of those studies didn't do what's called a power analysis to figure out how many participants they needed to have reliable results.
Oh, so it's like they might not have had enough students in their studies to be really confident in their findings.
Exactly. And that means we need to interpret these results with a grain of salt.
Okay, so we need more research, bigger studies, and more rigorous methods. But even with these limitations, this meta-analysis gives us a valuable starting point for understanding the potential impact of ChatGPT on learning.
It's like a roadmap for future research, highlighting the areas where we need to dig deeper and the questions we need to answer.
Well, with that in mind, let's move on to some of the more fascinating aspects of this research. I'm really curious to see how ChatGPT is being used in real-world classrooms and learning environments.
Me too. Let's dive into some specific examples.
Okay, so let's get into some of those specifics from the research. One thing that really jumped out at me is that using ChatGPT for a few weeks, like 3 to 5, seems to lead to better academic performance than using it for a shorter period or for longer than 10 weeks.
Yeah, it's like there's this sweet spot, too short, and students might not really get how to use it effectively. Too long, and maybe they become too reliant on it, or that initial boost in motivation kind of fades away.
So it's all about finding that balance, right? Where students are benefiting from the AI assistance, but not becoming dependent on it.
Right, exactly. Like, we want them to use it as a tool to enhance their learning, not as a crutch.
And speaking of dependence, let's go back to that concern about students using ChatGPT to, ace tests without actually learning the material. Well, this meta-analysis found some evidence to back up that worry. When researchers looked at studies where students were allowed to use ChatGPT during testing, the positive impact on academic performance was, way more noticeable.
Makes you wonder, right? How much of that improvement was real learning versus just students getting really good at prompting ChatGPT to give them the answers?
It really highlights the need for more research that carefully controls for AI assistance during assessments. We need to be able to tell the difference between genuine learning gains and, AI-enhanced performance, if you will.
Yeah, I like that. AI-enhanced performance. It's like Are they actually mastering the skills and knowledge, or are they just becoming masters of AI manipulation?
Right. It's not enough to just look at the grades. We got to dig deeper, Look, the quality of thinking behind those grades. Okay, so let's shift gears for a bit and talk about the experience of learning. This is where things get really interesting with ChatGPT. The research suggests that using it can actually make learning more enjoyable, especially for university students.
Yeah, it makes sense when you think about it. University students are often dealing with, way more complex tasks than, say, high school students. Research papers, presentations, in-depth analysis. Having ChatGPT as a brainstorming partner or a writing assistant could make those tasks less intimidating.
Yeah, it's like having a 247 study buddy who never gets tired of answering your questions or helping you work through those tough concepts. But as with anything, we need to approach these findings with, a healthy dose of skepticism. Remember, a lot of this is based on students saying they felt more motivated.
We need more research to see if those positive feelings actually translate into, real changes in behavior and, long-term engagement with the material.
Okay, so get ready for another plot twist, because the research also suggests that ChatGPT might actually enhance higher-order thinking skills.
It does seem counterintuitive, right? You'd think relying on AI would make us less likely to think deeply.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
But think about how ChatGPT could be used. Imagine a student using it to, gather different perspectives on an issue, to structure their arguments, or to identify gaps in their understanding. In those cases, ChatGPT could be acting as the sort of, cognitive scaffold, supporting students as they develop those critical thinking skills.
I like that analogy, the scaffold. It's like ChatGPT is providing a framework to help students build their own understanding.
Exactly.
But of course, we need more research to confirm this, to see if this, cognitive boost is actually happening.
Absolutely. And this leads us to another intriguing finding that, it adds another layer of complexity to this whole ChatGPT thing.
Okay, lay it on me.
Using ChatGPT seems to lead to a decrease in the amount of mental effort students put in.
So on the one hand, that sounds great. Who doesn't want things to be easier?
But there's a catch. The research found that this reduced mental effort was sometimes linked to, poorer performance on tasks that require deeper thinking, reasoning and argumentation.
So it's like that classic trade-off, right? Convenience versus true understanding.
It makes you wonder, are we sacrificing those deeper thinking skills for the sake of making things easier in the short term?
That's a really important question, and it's one we need to keep in mind as we think about how to integrate ChatGPT into education.
Right. It's not just about whether ChatGPT can do things for students. It's about how it changes the way they think.
Exactly. Okay, before we move on to some more of those fascinating use cases of ChatGPT, let's circle back to those methodological limitations we talked about.
You're right. It's important to acknowledge that these findings, they're really interesting. They do come with some caveats. We already talked about the power analysis issue. But there's another important limitation to consider: the time frame.
Oh, right. Most of these studies were conducted over a pretty short period. So it's like we're only getting a glimpse, a snapshot of the potential impact of ChatGPT.
Exactly. What happens when students use ChatGPT consistently over, say, an entire semester, or even their whole educational journey? Do those initial benefits hold up? Do new challenges emerge? We need more long-term studies to answer those questions.
And it's not just about the duration of use, it's also about the variety of learning environments and student populations, right?
Absolutely. The vast majority of these studies focused on university students. We need to know how ChatGPT impacts younger learners, in K-12 settings, where the developmental needs and educational goals are totally different.
And let's not forget about the subject matter. Most of this research focused on, language education, especially writing. But what about other subjects? Math, science, history, art.
You're hitting on a really crucial point. We need to explore how ChatGPT impacts learning across the whole spectrum of disciplines to get a truly comprehensive understanding of its potential.
So it seems like we've only just scratched the surface of this whole ChatGPT in education thing. There's so much more to explore, so many questions to answer.
It's a really exciting time to be involved in this field. As ChatGPT and other AI tools continue to evolve, it's going to be fascinating to see how they shape the future of learning.
Well, speaking of exploring further, this meta-analysis reviewed some really interesting use cases for ChatGPT, beyond just the typical writing assistants. Ready to dive into some of those?
Absolutely. I think you'll be surprised by some of the things ChatGPT can do.
All right, so we've talked about the potential good and bad, but let's get into some real-world stuff. This research actually found some pretty cool ways ChatGPT is being used out there.
Yeah, it's not just about grades and essays. There's some really innovative stuff happening.
Right, like one study had nursing students using ChatGPT to practice making ethical decisions in pediatric care.
That's a great example. Instead of just textbook scenarios, they're using AI to work through real-life dilemmas. Pretty amazing prep for those high-pressure situations they'll face.
Totally. And another study used ChatGPT to help students learn, get this, statistics.
Oh, statistics. The subject that can make even the most confident learner a little shaky.
For sure. I can definitely see how some AI help could make a difference there.
And it did. ChatGPT seemed to help students grasp those tricky concepts better and even improve their attitude toward the subject.
Nice. 2 birds, 1 stone. So ChatGPT can be an ethics coach and a statistics tutor. What else did they find?
Well, how about learning to code? There were a few studies that looked at using ChatGPT in introductory programming courses. Turns out having ChatGPT as a coding buddy can be super helpful, especially for beginners.
I can imagine it's like having a patient mentor who's always there to guide you through those inevitable coding blunders.
Exactly. And, one study even used ChatGPT to help students with their research projects.
Oh, wow, yeah. I bet that's a total game changer for things like brainstorming, organizing ideas, getting feedback, and just making those bibliographies not a total nightmare.
It seems like it. ChatGPT can be a really valuable research assistant, It frees up students to focus on the more challenging parts of research, like analyzing and interpreting information.
So we've got future nurses, statisticians, coders, and researchers all getting a boost from ChatGPT. It seems like this tool can really be used across a wide range of fields.
It really does highlight the versatility of ChatGPT. It's not just limited to one specific subject or skill. And that brings us to, I think, a really crucial point. As AI keeps getting more powerful, we need to have serious conversations about how we want to use it in education.
Yeah, it's not about replacing teachers or turning students into robots. It's about figuring out how to use AI to make education better, more engaging, and more effective for everyone.
We definitely need to be aware of the potential downsides, like becoming too reliant on AI and making sure it's used ethically. But we also need to be open to the possibilities, exploring new ways to use it to help students learn and grow.
It's a really exciting time to be thinking about the future of learning, and it seems like AI is going to play a big role in shaping that future.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into ChatGPT and education. We covered a lot of ground, from the research findings to the real-world applications and the big questions we need to be asking. Hopefully, you're walking away with a better understanding of this complex and rapidly evolving landscape.
And maybe even some inspiration to explore how AI can be used to enhance your own learning or teaching.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.